I never believed a small envelope could change the entire trajectory of my life. But there it was, thin, white, and tucked right under my pillow like some twisted version of a childhood tradition. My girlfriend, Emily, had always been obsessed with holidays. Not just Christmas, every holiday. She decorated for Valentine's Day like it was a national emergency, carved pumpkins with military precision, and bought matching pajamas for the 4th of July. So, when December rolled around and she started talking about keeping old traditions alive, I didn't think much of it. She mentioned something about St. Nicholas Day and how in her family, kids would find small gifts under their pillows to reward good behavior. Cute, wholesome, totally her. I expected maybe chocolate or some small sentimental trinket, not that. The night before, she seemed weirdly fidgety. She kept looking at me with this nervous smile, like she was waiting for something to happen. I asked if everything was okay, and she said she was just excited for tomorrow's surprise. She even insisted we go to bed early. Looking back, that should have been a red flag. Emily hated sleeping early. She was the type who'd suddenly decide at 1 a.m. that it was the perfect time to deep clean the bathroom. But I didn't question it. I wish I had. The next morning, I woke up to her sitting cross-legged beside me, biting her lip and watching me like I was unwrapping a lottery ticket. "Check under your pillow," she said softly. "Saint Nick brought you something." I reached under, still half asleep, expecting, I don't know, a candy cane, socks, one of those tiny stress relief toys she always impulse buys. But instead, my fingers touched the corner of an envelope, a heavy envelope. Something about the weight of it felt wrong, dense, serious. Emily exhaled sharply as I pulled it out. There was no decoration, no handwriting, no cute Christmas stickers. Just a printed label, results enclosed. My stomach dropped so fast I actually felt dizzy. "Emily, what is this?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. She just looked at me with this mix of fear and hope, like she was bracing for impact. "Open it," she whispered. My hands went numb as I tore the top of the envelope and pulled out the paper inside. The logo hit me first. A well-known DNA testing company. One of the ones people use for ancestry or family connections. But the document wasn't about ethnicity percentages or genealogy. It was a paternity test. My name was on it, so was someone else's. And next to probability of paternity, in bold black letters, it read 0%. I didn't even realize I'd stopped breathing until Emily's voice broke the silence. "I can explain," she said, but I couldn't speak, couldn't move, because below the result, there was a baby's name, and I recognized the last name. It was Emily's. My vision tunneled so hard I felt like the room was collapsing inward. I stared at the baby's name printed on the paper, Liam Carter Evans, and for a second, my brain refused to process it. Evans, Emily's last name, the date of birth listed was 6 months ago. 6 months? I looked up at her, my mouth dry as sandpaper. "Emily? Whose baby is this?" She didn't cry. That was the scary part. Emily cried at everything. Sad movies, dropped ice cream cones, even a touching insurance commercial once. But now, nothing. Just this hollow, resigned look. "It's mine," she said quietly. He's my son." My throat closed. I felt like I'd been punched, hard and deep, right under my ribs. You have a baby?" I finally forced out. "And you didn't tell me?" She flinched. "I was going to. I swear I was. But things got complicated and—" "Complicated?" I snapped. "Emily, we've been together for 2 years. How do you hide a whole human being from someone?" "I didn't hide him," she said, but her voice cracked. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how you'd react." "Oh, trust me," I said, waving the test in the air. "This is exactly the reaction you were trying to avoid." She inhaled sharply like she was preparing to dive underwater. "Please, just let me explain how this happened," she begged. "You deserve the truth." The truth. God, I wasn't sure I could handle it. But I nodded anyway, because what other choice did I have? My entire relationship suddenly felt like a rigged game I'd been losing, without even knowing I was playing. Emily sat down on the edge of the bed, hands folded like a child being scolded. "Before I met you," she said slowly, "I was seeing someone. His name was Daniel." The name hit me like cold water, because I recognized it. Daniel was the guy she told me about once, casually, the toxic ex, the one who cheated on her, the one she said she was so lucky to have escaped. I remember comforting her about him once when she accidentally ran into his sister at a grocery store and got all shaky. "You told me he was out of your life," I said. "He was, or I thought he was." She squeezed her hands together. "I found out I was pregnant right after we broke up, and when I tried contacting him, he blocked me everywhere." "So you just kept the baby?" I asked. She nodded. "I didn't want to tell anyone until I knew what I wanted to do. And then I met you." Those words burned because the timeline was becoming painfully clear. "You met me when you were already pregnant." I wasn't asking. I was stating a fact. She stared at her knees. "Yes." "And you never planned on telling me?" I said. "I did," she insisted. "But you and I were so good together. You were the first good thing to happen to me in so long. I was afraid if I told you you'd leave before giving us a chance." "So instead," I said slowly, "you waited until St. Nicholas Day to surprise me with a paternity test for a baby I didn't know existed." "I thought you'd understand," she whispered. "Understand what, Emily?" That Daniel reappeared," she said, voice trembling. 2 months ago, he reached out. He wanted to know if the baby could be his. I didn't want to lie to him, so I agreed to take a DNA test." My pulse spiked. 2 months ago. That was around the time she started acting strange, sleeping over less, making excuses about being overwhelmed with work. "So Daniel asked for the test," I said. "Not you." She nodded, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "He said he'd changed, that he wanted to step up. I didn't believe him, but I thought I owed it to Liam to know the truth." My hands were shaking now. "So why give it to me?" I demanded. "Why put this under my pillow instead of his?" That's when she finally said it, the sentence that made everything worse. "Because the second test was for you." My entire body froze. "What test?" I asked. Emily swallowed hard. "There was another DNA test in the envelope," she whispered. "One that checks familial matches." I blinked, not understanding. "What does that even mean?" "It means," she said softly, "that someone in your family might be Liam's real father." For a moment, I genuinely thought she was joking, like this was some psychotic early morning prank fueled by Christmas stress and too much peppermint coffee. But her expression didn't budge. Her eyes were swollen and red, her hands trembling. "Emily, what are you talking about?" I asked slowly, my voice barely holding together. "Someone in my family?" She nodded once, as if anything more would shatter her. "Daniel wasn't the only possibility," she whispered. "There was someone else, someone who could have been Liam's father." My ears started ringing, a sharp metallic buzz drowning out all other sound. "Who?" I demanded. She took a long, shaking breath. And then she said the last name I expected to ever hear in that context. "Your brother, Jacob." It felt like the floor dissolved, like gravity suddenly forgot how to work. My brother?" I choked. "Emily, what the actual—" "I was going through a horrible time," she blurted out, gripping her forehead. "Daniel had just left. I felt completely alone. I was drinking too much, and Jacob—" "Jacob what?" I snapped. "He kissed me," she finally said. My heart stopped, literally stopped. I had to inhale a few times before the world came back into focus. "Emily, when did this happen?" My voice sounded distant, not even like my own. She looked at the window instead of at me. "The night of your promotion party? When you left early because you weren't feeling well?" I remembered that night with painful clarity. I'd gotten a migraine halfway through and Ubered home. Emily stayed behind with my friends, including Jacob. I remember Jacob stumbling in at 3 a.m. that night, shirt wrinkled, smelling like a brewery. I yelled at him for waking me up, and he just smirked and collapsed onto the couch. I thought he was drunk and stupid. I didn't think he was hooking up with the woman I was falling in love with. You told me nothing happened at that party, I said, voice shaking. I didn't want anything to happen, she whispered. I tried to pull away. I swear I did. But I was drunk and emotional, and he was... No, don't you dare justify him, I snapped. He knew I liked you. I told him before the party. She winced. He said you were just casually talking to me. Casually? I nearly laughed. I introduced you 2 weeks after we started dating. How is that casual? I know, she said, crying again. I know I messed up. It was the biggest mistake of my life. I stood up, pacing because sitting still felt impossible. Okay, I said, trying to gather my crumbling sanity. So Daniel's a possibility? And Jacob apparently is too. She nodded. So the second DNA test, the one you had done, checks if Liam is related to me? Yes, she whispered, because if he wasn't Daniel's, then he might have been your nephew. My stomach twisted so violently I thought I'd throw up. And what did that test say? I asked. Emily's eyes filled instantly, overflowing. I didn't open it, she admitted. I couldn't. I was too scared. I stared at her. So you put it under my pillow instead? Yes. So you wanted me to be the one to open a test that could prove my girlfriend had a baby with my brother? I thought you deserved to know the truth, she said weakly. I laughed bitterly. Not before we'd been dating for 2 years. Not before introducing me to your family. Not before planning trips and holidays and talking about moving in. No. I deserved the truth on St. Nicholas Day, right before Christmas, wrapped like a festive trauma bomb. She started sobbing harder. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. Well, it did. Silence filled the room. Thick, cold, suffocating. The envelope lay on the bed between us, like a live grenade. Finally, with trembling fingers, I picked it up. If you won't open it, I said quietly. I will. Emily covered her mouth, sobbing into her hands. I slid my thumb under the seal, pulled out the folded document, unfolded it slowly, bracing myself. There it was. Familial DNA results. My name, Liam's name, and beneath it, a single line that made my blood run ice cold. Probability of close familial relationship, 99.8%. I read that number over and over again, waiting for it to change. 99.8%, not 10%, not 40%, not even 80%, almost certain. My legs went weak. I had to grab the side of the bed just to stay standing. Emily's sobbing quieted as she watched my face. What does it say? She whispered. I couldn't answer. My brain was clenching around the number like it was trying to choke it to death. She crawled closer, reaching out slowly. Please, tell me. I handed her the paper with numb fingers. She scanned it once, then gasped like someone had driven a knife between her ribs. She pressed her fist to her chest, her breathing coming in sharp, painful bursts. No, this isn't... She shook her head violently. It can't be Jacob's. I didn't respond, mostly because I had no idea what to think, or feel, or even believe. The room spun around me. Emily dropped the paper, letting it flutter to the floor like trash. No, she said again, louder. No, he told me... He said nothing happened. He said we didn't go all the way. My jaw clenched so hard I felt pain shoot down my neck. So you did talk to him about it, I said. Her eyes widened, realizing what she'd admitted. Yes, but only after I found out I was pregnant. I needed to know if there was even a chance. And he lied, I snapped. Wow, shocking. My brother lying? Who could have predicted that? I wasn't even yelling. I wasn't angry in the explosive way people picture in fights. No, this was different. This was betrayal sinking in like poison. Slow, cold, permanent. Emily crawled toward me, desperate. I swear to God, I don't remember sleeping with him. I was blackout drunk. I thought the kiss was the worst of it. I thought it ended there. I held up a hand, stopping her. Emily, I said, my voice cracking. That doesn't matter right now. Her face fell. Please, don't say that. What matters, I continued, is that the test says Liam is related to me. She shook her head frantically, still in denial. It could be a lab mistake, or maybe they mixed up samples, or maybe it's, I don't know, some weird genetic overlap. People share DNA all the time, right? Right? Her voice was pure panic, but I couldn't bring myself to soothe her. Emily, I said softly, you know what 99.8% means. She collapsed onto the carpet, head in her hands, crying so hard her shoulders shook. I looked at the test again, at that chilling number. Then something clicked in my head. Wait. I blinked. Why does it say close familial relationship and not paternal probability like the other one? Emily sniffled, lifting her head slightly. What? I read more carefully. The document didn't say I was the father. It didn't say Jacob was the father. It said I was closely related, sibling, uncle, cousin, half-brother. It wasn't specific. My mind raced. Emily, this test doesn't prove Jacob is the father, I said slowly. It only proves Liam is related to someone in my family. She froze. Her tears stopped mid-fall. She looked up at me with wide, terrified eyes. So, it could still be Daniel? She whispered hopefully. No, I said. Daniel isn't related to me. Her face twisted. Then, who? I felt my throat close. And that's when the most horrifying possibility hit me. A possibility so insane, so unthinkable that I actually laughed for a second. A short, sharp, terrified laugh. Emily frowned. What is it? I sank onto the bed, rubbing my temples. Emily, what if Jacob isn't the only relative we should be thinking about? She blinked. Who else would it be? I looked up at her slowly. My dad. Her mouth fell open. No. Are you saying... I don't know, I yelled, standing up. But it makes sense, doesn't it? A close familial match. Not specific. High percentage. What if... I swallowed, my voice dropping. What if my father hooked up with you that night instead of Jacob? Emily stared at me, like the air had been knocked from her lungs. I would remember, she whispered. Oh my God, I would remember. You were blackout drunk, I said. You said it yourself. But your dad wasn't even at the party. I froze. Was he? I didn't think so. But then I remembered earlier that day he was at the office for my promotion celebration. He'd had drinks, more than usual, and he'd left without saying goodbye. I never asked where he went after. My pulse spiked again. Emily put a hand over her mouth, horrified. Oh my God, you think your dad could be the father of my baby? I didn't answer, because I had absolutely no idea. All I knew was this. The test didn't just open a door, it tore the whole house down. Emily and I just sat there in suffocating silence, both of us spiraling in different directions. The idea that my brother could be Liam's father was already a nightmare, but the thought that my dad, my actual father, might somehow be involved, that was something darker, something my brain refused to accept, even while it clawed at the edges of possibility. Emily finally whispered, barely audible, We need to think logically, step by step. But logic was the last thing either of us had left. I grabbed my phone. My hand was shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I'm calling Jacob, I said. Emily scrambled to her feet. No, please, don't tell him yet. Not until we're sure. I glared at her. Sure? Emily, I'm holding a test that says the child you had could be my family's kid. We are way past waiting. Before she could argue, I hit the call button. Jacob answered on the third ring, his voice groggy and annoyed. Bro, it's 8 a.m. What happened the night of my promotion party? I snapped. Instant silence. Then cautiously, Okay, weird question. Why? I felt my pulse hammering against my temples. Did you sleep with Emily? Emily shook her head violently, mouthing, Please don't, but I ignored her. Jacob let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Dude, what? No. I told her that night, and I'll tell you now. Nothing happened. She was wasted. I helped her upstairs. She kissed me. I told her no, and I left. That's it, Emily whispered. That's what he told me. But I wasn't letting him off that easy. So, you didn't sleep with her? I repeated. For the last time, no. Jacob sounded offended now. Why are you even asking? I stared at the test lying on the bed like a ticking bomb. Because Emily has a baby. Dead silence on the line. What? Jacob whispered. She had a baby 6 months ago. Jacob swore quietly. And the father? He asked. I closed my eyes, feeling a wave of nausea. We don't know. He hesitated. And you think it might be me? We found a DNA test, I said. It shows a close familial relationship between Liam and someone in our family. Jacob didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. Then, someone in our family, meaning me or Dad? Hearing him say it made my blood run cold. Emily pressed her hands to her face, shaking. Jacob, I said, voice low. Dad was drinking that day. Did he go to the after party? Did he show up at the bar that night? Jacob hesitated again. Way too long. I'm not sure, he finally said. I left early. You know how he gets when he drinks too much. He wanders, talks to strangers, goes wherever someone offers another round. My stomach twisted. Did anyone see him at the bar? I asked. I don't know, man, Jacob said. But if you're seriously thinking Dad might have... Jesus, this is insane. You think I don't know that? Jacob let out a shaky breath. Okay, I'll come over. We need to figure this out together. Don't do anything stupid. I'm not doing anything stupid, I said. I'm trying to figure out who the father of my girlfriend's baby is. He hung up. I tossed my phone onto the bed and leaned against the wall, staring at nothing. Emily walked toward me slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I never wanted this. I panicked. I thought maybe if I brought everything into the open on one day, we could deal with it together. I laughed, sharp and hollow. You brought everything into the open by dropping a DNA test under my pillow, like some horrific Christmas stocking stuffer. She winced, tears brimming again. You're right, she whispered. I should have told you a year ago, or the second I found out, or literally any other day. I was scared you'd leave. Well, I said, that worked out great for both of us, didn't it? She flinched again. Then something in her face shifted, a slow dawning realization. Wait, she said. Why would the company send you the familial results? Shouldn't they have sent them to me? I blinked. That was a good question. I looked at the envelope again, flipping it over. And there, printed faintly on the back, was a second shipping label, half torn, almost invisible. It read, Requester, Daniel Morris. Emily's ex. Emily gasped. Why would Daniel run a familial test on you? I felt the room tilt. Unless Daniel wasn't trying to see if the baby was Jacob's. Unless he suspected someone else. Someone closer. Someone older. I felt ice crawl down my spine. Emily, I said slowly, I think Daniel already knew something. About your family? No. I swallowed hard. About my dad. Emily stared at me, pale as paper. Why would Daniel know anything about your father? I rubbed my forehead. Because Daniel's mom works at my dad's old company. They've known each other for years. Emily's breath hitched. Are you saying? Daniel thought your dad might be the father of my baby before you did? I didn't answer, because the truth was suddenly too big, too heavy to say out loud. And then, a knock on the door. 3 sharp, urgent taps. Emily froze. I froze. It wasn't Jacob. Jacob lived 20 minutes away. This person knocked like they'd been waiting outside. Emily whispered, Who is that? I checked the time. 8:11 a.m., way too early for anyone to casually show up. I stepped toward the door, heart pounding. Another knock, harder this time. I took a breath, opened it, and standing there on my doorstep was the last person I expected. My dad. My dad stood there like a ghost in broad daylight, pale, shaken, eyes flicking past me into the apartment, as if he already knew what he'd find. He wasn't dressed for a casual visit. He was still in last night's clothes, shirt wrinkled, jacket half zipped, hair disheveled in a way I'd never seen on him. "Dad," I said, stunned. "What are you doing here?" He swallowed hard. "I need to talk to you. Both of you. Both." My stomach dropped. Emily stood behind me, frozen in place. When my dad saw her, something flashed across his face. Something between guilt and dread. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "We need to sit down," he said quietly. Emily backed away. I followed him into the living room. He looked older, not physically, something deeper, like he'd aged internally overnight. "Dad," I said, heart pounding. "What is going on?" He sank onto the couch, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together, the posture he took whenever he was about to deliver bad news. "I got a call last night," he said, "from Daniel." The name hit the air like a slap. Emily gasped. "Daniel called you!" Dad nodded, rubbing his forehead. "He told me Liam had been tested, that a familial match came back, and that I might be involved." Emily's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God!" I stepped back, dizzy. "You knew about the test before I did?" He nodded, shame etched into every line of his face. "I didn't know it would involve you," he said quickly. "I didn't know he'd send the results to your address. I came because I knew you'd find out today." Emily's voice cracked. "Whoa, why today?" Dad sighed, a long, ragged breath. "Because Daniel gave me a deadline. He said if I didn't come clean, he would." I stared at him in disgusted disbelief. "Come clean about what?" Dad looked at Emily, then at me, then closed his eyes, and when he finally spoke, his voice was a hoarse whisper. "I was at the bar that night." Emily stumbled backward like she'd been hit. No, you weren't," she said. "I would remember? I didn't see you." Dad shook his head. "You wouldn't have. You were barely conscious when Jacob carried you outside for fresh air. I saw you both near the parking lot. I thought he was hurting you." "Jacob?" His voice echoed in my head. She was wasted. I helped her upstairs. She kissed me. I told her no. Dad continued, his voice trembling. "I yelled at him. We argued. He walked away, and you couldn't stand up. You fell against me. You kept saying you wanted to go home, but you didn't know where home was." Emily's face was turning white. I couldn't breathe. "I put you in my car," Dad said, "thinking I'd drive you home. But halfway there, you threw up. You were incoherent. You asked me to stay with you because you felt scared." He paused, shaking. "I should have taken you inside. I should have put you to bed. I should have walked away." The silence was suffocating. "But I didn't." Emily whispered, No, please don't say it." Dad's eyes were full of tears now. "I made the worst mistake of my life, and I'm not proud. I'm sick about it. I crossed a line I can never uncross." My mind shattered. Emily collapsed on the couch, sobbing into her hands. I felt like I was watching a slow-motion explosion, one that kept getting worse, piece by piece. "So you did sleep with her?" I said, my voice hollow. He wiped his eyes. It shouldn't have. I was drunk too, but that's no excuse. I thought she was making a choice. I didn't realize how far gone she was." Emily screamed through tears. "I don't remember anything. You knew me. You knew I was your son's girlfriend. How could you think?" Dad flinched like the words physically struck him. I know. I've been living with the guilt every day." I was shaking uncontrollably. "And when Emily got pregnant?" I asked. "What then?" "I didn't know," Dad whispered. "I had no idea until Daniel called yesterday." I laughed, a broken, angry sound that didn't feel like it came from me. "So, you didn't come here to confess," I said. "You came here because you got caught." Dad didn't defend himself. He didn't even try. "Please," he said quietly, "let me make this right." "Make it right?" I exploded. "You might have a child with my girlfriend. How in God's name do you make that right?" Dad dropped his head into his hands. Emily sobbed harder, my vision blurred with fury, betrayal, disgust. "Get out," I said. Dad looked up, stunned. Son, get out! Emily flinched at the volume. Dad stood slowly, shoulders slumped. I'm sorry, he whispered, more than you'll ever know. He walked to the door, and right as he opened it, Jacob appeared, breathless, confused, and horrified as he saw Dad emerge from inside. Dad? What the hell are you doing here? Dad didn't answer. He just brushed past him and left. Jacob stepped inside, eyes darting between me, Emily, and the crumpled test papers on the floor. What happened? He demanded. I stared at him, numb. Jacob, I said, voice breaking, Dad might be Liam's father. His face drained of all color. What? Emily sobbed again, raw, broken, helpless. Jacob just stood there, stunned, lost, as the reality sank in. But the worst part? The part none of us wanted to say out loud? The test wasn't definitive. A close familial match could mean Dad. It could mean Jacob. Hell, it could even mean a cousin we didn't consider. We still didn't know for sure. And there was one more test we hadn't done. The one that could end the guessing, the fear, the denial, the one thing that could destroy our family instantly, a direct paternity test. Jacob whispered, We need to know whose baby this is. Emily nodded weakly, and then they both looked at me, waiting, knowing the next decision was mine. I took a slow, shaky breath. Fine, I said. We'll get the test. But as I said it, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. The next 48 hours were the longest of my life. Emily barely slept. Jacob kept pacing the apartment like a caged animal, and I felt like someone had carved out my insides and left me hollow. Jacob cracked his knuckles. Daniel took a step back. We're not here to fight you, I said. We're here to tell you that you're going to take responsibility. You're going to sign the legal documents, and you're going to pay what you owe. Daniel tried to speak, but nothing came out. He knew he was cornered. He knew the truth was out. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something like control returning. When Jacob and I walked back to the car, I finally let out a breath I had been holding for what felt like days. But there was still one more conversation I had to face. Emily. When I got home, she stood there waiting, eyes red, cheeks blotchy, hands shaking. I'm so sorry, she whispered, for everything, for the lies, for the fear, for dragging you into chaos you never deserved. I looked at her, really looked. I'm not angry because of the baby, I said quietly. I'm angry because you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. You carried this alone for so long, and you made decisions without me, decisions that hurt both of us. She nodded, tears falling silently. So, what now? She whispered. I exhaled slowly. I don't know, I admitted. I need time. We both do. She nodded. I understand. But Emily, I added. She looked up. Liam deserves a father who cares. And if Daniel won't be that, I hope someday he finds someone who will. She swallowed hard. And what about us? I hesitated, not out of anger, but out of honesty. I don't know yet, I said. This wasn't a small mistake. This was life-changing, and I need to heal before I can decide anything. She nodded, heartbroken but accepting, and for the first time since that envelope appeared under my pillow, the room felt still, quiet, real. Christmas came 2 days later, and even though it wasn't joyful or magical or warm, it was honest, and maybe, just maybe, that was the only gift I was ready for. The end.